What a game and what a gift to college football fans, not from Pennsylvania. Notre Dame edging out Penn State in the Orange Bowl 27-24. And at one point, we thought we were headed for overtime, but a late interception set up a game-winning field goal for Mitch Jeter, and Notre Dame is headed to the national championship. Let's talk more about this one and welcome in Drew Mentock from Irish Illustrated and Mark Brennan from Lions 24/7. Drew, from your estimation, how did Notre Dame win this game?
I think Notre Dame really won this game. As Riley Leonard said before the Orange Bowl, Marcus Freeman is an extension of this team. They won because they embodied their head coach, and that allowed them to be more resilient and aggressive down the stretch. Early on, Penn State flipped the script on them. They owned them up front, and it looked like we might be even headed for a blowout. And then Notre Dame totaled 313 yards and 27 points over the final 32 minutes of this game. Jeremiah Love in the second half played with a banged-up knee and still set the tone with some of those most hard-fought runs of the year. Riley Leonard completed almost 70% of his passes in the second half for 160 yards. That's more than Drew Aller had in the whole game. Irish cornerbacks were really shut out Penn State receivers, and Notre Dame has now forced 13 teams to complete fewer than 56% of its passes. Obviously, that secondary picked off that key pass that set up the game-winning field goal. Ultimately, Notre Dame always believed it would win, even when most of us thought they couldn't at certain points.
Yeah, this was a crazy game momentum-wise. It felt like things just continued to change throughout it, but that made for some beautiful television and an incredibly tight game. So for Penn State, Mark, what do you think was the difference in this one?
Yeah, Emily, just following up on what Drew said, Notre Dame made the plays when it mattered. Penn State's up 7 with less than 8 minutes to go, and it's one mistake after another. A blown coverage for a touchdown, Nick Singleton going in motion that kind of snuffs out a drive before it even starts, Zane Durant hitting Riley Leonard in the head, batting him upside the head, and then obviously Drew Aller's gigantic interception, a pass that he just can't throw. And you're in a position where all you have to do is not make all of those mistakes, and at the worst case scenario, you're going to overtime. Unfortunately for Penn State fans, they've seen this over and over again against the best opponents, and a very difficult one for Penn State because they were in a good position, and ultimately, maybe you survive one of those mistakes, maybe two, but when you start stacking 4 mistakes like that late in the game, you're going to be in trouble against a team as good as Notre Dame. So credit Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame for making the plays when it mattered, which Penn State did not do.
Yeah, Mark, you heard Drew talk about how this Notre Dame team really embodies Marcus Freeman and everything that he stands for. We knew that anything short of a win for Penn State, the conversation surrounding James Franklin was going to be a mess, and it has been. What is your take on maybe just how we view this season from the Penn State perspective as it pertains to the head coach narrative?
Yeah, it's going to take a while for Penn State fans to get over this just because of the way Penn State lost. I think it might have almost been better had Penn State been blown out, but it's another game. We saw it against Oregon. We really saw it against Ohio State, where Penn State was right there and just did not make the clutch plays when it mattered. I do think, though, Emily, given some time, Penn State fans are going to be able to take a step back and realize there's been all this talk from fans, and it started with Franklin about 6 years ago, about Penn State getting to be elite. Well, I think you make it to the Final Four, what's essentially a Final Four of college football. I think it's fair to say you're elite, but they now have to take that next step to become national championship viable, potential winners, and they're just not quite there. They've kept getting better and better, but again, when you're making they're not the exact same mistakes, but when you're making key mistakes against the best opponents late in the game, that's a reflection of coaching, and that's something they have to get past.
Yeah, he didn't throw that interception, but ultimately, yes, a lot of the pressure is going to continue to fall on the head man. On the other side of things, Drew, based on who they could potentially see in the national championship game, they have no control over it. They will be watching the game like us, but who do you think Notre Dame is hoping to face in the title game?
I don't think this will come as a surprise, but I think Notre Dame is hoping to see Texas. When we saw how Notre Dame can be susceptible against the run against Penn State, Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen had really good games, and that really put Notre Dame behind early. I think Ohio State's Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins might be even more explosive and dangerous. Statistically, Texas is only a slightly above average rushing team, picking up about 4.5 yards per carry. I also like how Notre Dame's top-ranked pass efficiency defense matches up against the Longhorns. I think they can force Quinn Ewers to make some costly mistakes. The Irish lead the nation with 32 turnovers gained. Also, I know Notre Dame has played some talented Ohio State teams closer for the last 2 years, even owning leads near the start of the fourth quarter, but I'm not sure how well a severely beat up Irish roster matches up with a Buckeye team that's dominating pretty much everyone. Plus, all of a sudden the narrative becomes Marcus Freeman facing his alma mater again, especially after losing in 2 national championship games while he was at Ohio State. So I think Penn State is a better matchup and comes with less distractions.
Yeah, you mentioned Marcus Freeman, obviously very exciting. He will be the first black head coach to coach in a national championship game. But when you look at the potential matchups, you kind of laid this out a little bit for us in terms of why they would prefer to see Texas. But either way, I want to know what kind of Notre Dame team is hobbling to the finish line here. It would probably be a faster answer if I asked you who is available, but what is the goal between now and the national title game?
Yeah, it's fortunate that Notre Dame this time gets that extra day of rest compared to its opponent. But as you mentioned, Notre Dame, they lost 2 of their starting offensive linemen last night. I think on both sides of the ball, if you look at it, they're down 6, 7, or 8 starters on both sides of the lines. So they're really banged up. And Notre Dame is a team that really needs to be the one who's dominating in the trenches. You saw last night in the first half when Penn State was pushing them around and how Notre Dame really couldn't do anything. Right now, Notre Dame really needs to get some of those guys healthy. We'll see what happens with Anthony Knapp. He spent the second half yesterday in his jersey without pads on, so that's not a great sign, and they definitely need him back, even though he's a true freshman, to kind of really make sure the offensive line can be the physical imposing force that it needed to hopefully win the national championship.
All right, before I let you guys go, I got to put you on the spot here. We got one more game tonight. Mark, who you got in the Cotton Bowl?
Ohio State. I think the best thing that happened to Ohio State was that Michigan loss. It got them focused. I've seen that team up close and personal. Just an unbelievable athletic team, and so I'm going with the Buckeyes.
Drew, you said Notre Dame hopes to see Texas, but will they?
I agree. I'm going with Mark's pick. I think Ohio State, like you said, we saw Notre Dame be galvanized after a really kind of embarrassing loss to Northern Illinois. It kind of seems like you said, the same thing is happening for Ohio State right now. And they are also the most talented team in the country, too. So both of those make for a dangerous combination.
Yeah, we could see Notre Dame versus Ohio State, 2 teams absolutely driven by inexplicable losses this season. But hey, that helps get you to the title game. It could. Thank you both so much for recapping that exciting Orange Bowl game for us. If you want more coverage on Notre Dame, check out Irish Illustrated and read up on today's news that Abdul Carter declaring for the NFL draft. They're all over it.